Hello everyone and welcome to Organizational Excellence Webcast for Secondary Enrollment Procedures with Yvette Terriega. Before we begin the program, we'll review the GoToWebinar program we'll be using for those of you who may not be familiar with it. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see the GoToWebinar control panel. Starting from the top of the panel, you'll notice radio buttons to choose between telephone and mic and speakers for the audio portion of today's program. Please make certain that mic and speakers is selected. If you find the volume right now is too loud or too soft, click the settings hyperlink to adjust the volume on your computer. Below the audio controls, you'll find a raised hand button. If you are asked at any time during the presentation to raise your hand, clicking this button will allow the presenter to see your raised hand. Towards the bottom of the control panel, you'll see a chat box where you can submit any questions you may have. Simply type your question and either press the send button associated with the chat box or simply hit the enter key on your computer's keyboard. We may experience a lag in the audio or visual content due to network congestion. In most cases, the program will catch up once the congestion clears. We'll also upload a recording of this program to the Learning Zone after this session. During today's presentation, if your GoToWebinar control panel collapses into a smaller control bar, you can expand it to ask a question, raise your hand, or adjust your settings. Click the orange arrow at the top of the control bar. Yvette Terriega is a classified training representative for secondary schools. She joined the classified training team in May of 2013. Before joining Organizational Excellence, Yvette worked as a school administrative assistant for 13 years. She has worked for the Los Angeles Unified School District for over 25 years, 23 of which have been at the secondary level. And now, here's Yvette.
Make sure that you click adjust the sound. Okay.
The information provided in today's presentation is in the attendance manual, Policy and Procedures for Elementary, Secondary, and Option Schools, dated March 2013, version 3.0. Reference guides, bulletins, and memos have also been used as references for this presentation. I encourage everyone to have a pen and paper handy to take notes. I will provide page numbers and reference bulletin and memo numbers for some of the documents and information in today's webcast. You will also need to jot down your questions, and at the end of my portion of the presentation, we'll be taking a few minutes to answer any questions you may have. Let me remind you that any questions regarding MISIS will be directed to the presenter for that section of the webcast. We're first going to talk about residency requirements. The residency requirements for students attending LAUSD is that they only have one residence within the LAUSD boundaries. This means that if a student's parents share custody, the child can only be enrolled in one school. The student may live in the residence of his or her parent or guardian who resides within the boundaries of the school district, a licensed foster or group home, the home of a caregiver adult that is located within the boundaries of the school, or a state hospital located within the boundaries of the school district. Keep in mind that there are special circumstances that can allow a student to attend your school even if they live outside your particular school boundaries. We will be going over some of those special circumstances in the next slide. More information on special circumstances is located in the attendance manual under Special Circumstances on page 23 of the attendance manual. Here are some special circumstances with LAUSD placement on the left and permits on the right. District placement, Education Service Center superintendents or designees have the authority to make the final decision on special circumstance placements. SARB, the School Attendance Review Board, has the right to make placement recommendations. With open enrollment, the California Department of Education creates a list of 1,000 low-achieving schools every year. Students attending one of those schools have the option to request a transfer to another school with a higher API score within the same district or to another district. Refer to Bulletin 5255.0, Implementation of the Romero Open Enrollment Act, dated September 8, 2010. Opportunity transfers, or OTs, are carefully planned transfers within LAUSD schools. The underlying intent of this policy is to provide intervention and guidance to students that will result in the students' improved behavior. Moving over to the right side of your screen, Magnet and Permits with Transfers, or PWTs. Student enrollment is limited to students residing within LAUSD boundaries. Refer to the Annual Choices brochure created and administered by the Office of Student Integration Services for application information. Intra-district permits are for students who reside within LAUSD boundaries. Principals must ensure that students have a current valid permit. Intra-district permits may be granted for students to attend a school in the LAUSD boundaries other than the school of residence. These permits are not processed through the Office of Permits and Student Transfers. They are handled by the two schools involved. Refer to Bulletin 5347.1, Intra-District Permits, School-to-School, and Student Transfers in Elementary and Secondary Schools. Next is the Inter-District Permits. These are for students who reside outside LAUSD boundaries and wish to attend an LAUSD school, or for students who live within the boundaries but wish to attend a school outside LAUSD boundaries. All incoming inter-district permits must be completed online. Paper applications are no longer accepted. The permit application can be found at http://studentpermits.lausd.net. Make sure to read the application instructions carefully and adhere to the deadlines. Like intra-district permits, principals must ensure that appropriate permits are submitted and approved. You can refer to Bulletin 5341.2, Inter-District Permits and Student Transfers in Elementary and Secondary Schools, dated January 23, 2013. We have continuing enrollment permits, and that's when a student moves out of the attendance area of the school he or she is attending but wishes to remain at that school. A continuing enrollment permit may be granted. We next need to verify residency. To verify residency, LAUSD accepts utility bills such as gas, water, and electricity. Other documents such as property taxes, rental agreements, and official government mail such as CalWORKS and Social Security are also acceptable documents to verify residency. Please note that LAUSD does not accept telephone bills, driver's licenses, or DMV identification cards as proof of residence. In the event that a parent or guardian or caregiver does not possess proper documentation to verify residency, you must allow him or her to submit an affidavit to verify residency. This form is on page 114 of the attendance manual. You will instruct the parent or guardian that he or she is responsible for providing proof of residency within 30 days. There is also a follow-up letter that is to be sent to the parent or guardian. This is Appendix D-3A on page 120. Mail the letter the same day the parent or guardian completes enrollment. The 30 days will begin as of that date. Maintain a binder of all original affidavits to verify residence, including a log to monitor follow-ups. Designated staff must check the return mail on a monthly basis. If the parent or guardian returns this letter to the school, that serves as sufficient evidence to verify residency and no further follow-up is necessary. If the letter is returned undeliverable, the administrator must notify the parent in writing that the student does not reside in the school's attendance area, determine the school of residence, and proceed with the transfer process. Schools should not request parents or guardians to notarize their affidavit or any other documents to prove residency. We next need to establish the student's identity. You may establish the student's identity with a birth certificate, baptismal certificate, or a court order. LAUSD no longer accepts passports to establish a student's identity. If the parent or guardian does not possess proper documentation, you must allow them to submit an affidavit for proof of age of minor. This is a sample of the affidavit for proof of age of minor, and this can be located on page 151 of the attendance manual. Next, we must establish parent or legal guardian's identity. To establish a parent or legal guardian's identity and to verify the relationship of the adult to the student, we accept the following documents: a birth certificate and a state identification, such as a driver's license, DMV identification card, or passport, a baptismal certificate along with the state identification, or a court order establishing the parent or guardian's relationship. If the parent or legal guardian does not possess any of these documents, you must allow them to submit an affidavit of parent-guardian identification. Here is a copy of the affidavit of parent or legal guardian identification. You can find this form on page 154 of the attendance manual. In the absence of a parent or legal guardian, we must not delay enrollment. If the student is not living with the parent or legal guardian and guardianship has not been established by the court, you should provide the adult who is enrolling the student with a caregiver's affidavit found on page 156 of the attendance manual. Make sure to take a copy of the identification provided and keep it with the enrollment documents. We're now going to talk about our enrollment packets. There are two different enrollment packets that we should prepare ahead of time and have ready for our parents. The first one is a packet for a brand new student to LAUSD, and the second packet is for a student who is transferring from an LAUSD school. The enrollment packet for a brand new student to LAUSD must include all the documents listed on the left side of your screen. This includes the student enrollment form, student emergency information form, temporary student health card, immunization history, student meal application, student residency questionnaire, ethnicity race identification for student form, migrant education program questionnaire, American Indian Alaskan Native letter questionnaire, and the financial responsibility for damaged school property letter. A packet for the student coming from one LAUSD school to another LAUSD school only needs to include the forms listed on the right, which are the student enrollment form, student emergency information form, and the student residency questionnaire. We'll be going over each of these documents in the enrollment packet a little later in the presentation. This form is the enrollment document checklist, and this is for office use only. It is used to ensure that the parent is provided all the mandated enrollment documents and resources. Please verify that all the documents and resources on this form are provided to the parents or guardians. The office staff providing the enrollment packet to the parent or guardian must sign and date the bottom of this form. This form is to be kept with the enrollment documents. We're now going to start by going over the student enrollment form. This is a new form that all schools should be using. It is available online on the LAUSD website, and triplicate hard copies can be ordered from the school's warehouse. Parents also have access to the electronic version on the LAUSD website. The top section of this form is for office use only and should be completed with the correct information. Be careful with the enrollment dates. At the secondary level, enrollment is not complete until all enrollment forms have been completed and submitted, and the student's attendance has been recorded in all classes. This means that if a student submits all the enrollment documents today but does not attend all classes until tomorrow, the enrollment date will be tomorrow's date. The enrollment date is important for the accuracy of the classification and statistical reports. Make sure the student's name, birth date, and address match the information provided to you by the parent or guardian. Verify the spelling of the student's name against the legal document, and make sure that the spelling of the student's name is exactly the same as what is on the legal document, such as the birth certificate or baptismal certificate. Section C, question 1, is a home language and ethnicity information for student. Below that in Section C, questions 2, 3, and 4 pertain to the student's ethnicity and race. These questions are also on the ethnicity race questionnaire in the enrollment packet. Both the questions on the enrollment form and the ethnicity race identification document must be completed. Section D contains very important information regarding the student's educational services, such as special education, 504 plans, and GATE. Questions 2 in this section is information on previous schools. This information will tell us if the student is brand new to LAUSD or if they are a returning student. We will also use this information to request student records from the previous schools. Section D is the continuance of the student's educational information. Please note that question F is asking for the date of the first U.S. school enrollment, excluding preschool. And G is asking for the first date of the first California school enrollment, excluding preschool. Section E is additional household information, such as information on court orders and foster care, if applicable. If the student is in foster care, make sure the social worker's name and phone number are provided, as well as a notification of placement status form. Questions 4 and 5 in Section E, additional household information, are questions that are also included in the enrollment form. These questions must be answered on both the enrollment form and the enrollment documents. Here are 2 more sections for additional family information. Notice that the information on all sections are the same with the exception of the first one on the front of the enrollment form. This section does not have a space for an address, and that's because the parent that's indicated in that section on the front page should be the parent or guardian or caregiver that lives with the student. Section F has 1 more space for additional family information. The section below that is asking for information on additional school-age children living in the home, including brothers, sisters, and cousins. This section on emergency contact information should contain more than 1 emergency contact number, if at all possible. Lastly, please make sure the parent or guardian or caregiver signs and prints his or her name, dates the form, and indicates the relationship to the student. This next form is the office checklist for student enrollment. Office staff should complete this form while the parent is in the office at the time of enrollment. Although this does take a few minutes longer for each enrollment, it saves us time on the back end of the enrollment process. This form is to be completed using the student's completed enrollment form. Using this form ensures that the necessary information is obtained from the parent or guardian, and it also helps when it comes time to enter the information into our system. This checklist must be placed in the CUME record of all students enrolled at your school. You're going to take the completed enrollment form and go down the list of questions. For example, question number 1 asks, what document did you receive to verify age? Was it a birth certificate, baptismal certificate, or an affidavit? Question number 2 asks, what document did you receive to verify residency? Did you use a gas bill, a water bill, or was an affidavit used? Question number 3 asks, did you receive immunization verification? You want to make sure that you have a copy of the proof of immunizations that was provided to you by the parent or guardian. And question number 4, you will list all affidavits used if applicable. Jumping down to question number 7, this asks if an optional attendance area decision form was completed. This pertains to schools that are within the zone of choice area. For example, students can choose from 2 or more schools in the zoning area. Once the parent and student decides on a school within the zone of choice, that is the student's school of residence. If the parent and student decide to transfer to a different school within the zone of choice, he or she will have to go through the normal transfer process with an intra-district permit. Section B, additional household information follow-up, pertains to information such as court orders, foster care, and American Indian, Alaskan Native ancestry. Again, this information is also on the documents in the packet. Please make sure both are completed. In Section C, enrollment staff and data entry follow-up, make sure that the office staff that verifies the information on the enrollment form initials and dates the first line, and the person who enters the data into the system initials and dates the third line of Section C. Be mindful that there are 2 sides to this form and both contain very important information. Make sure both sides of the form are completed. The information at the top refers to the student's educational information. 1A was a student receiving special ed services at the previous school. Question 1B asks, did the student have an IEP at the previous school? And if so, did you receive a copy of the IEP? Question 1C in Section D pertains to 504 plans, and 1E in this section pertains to gate information. For more information on the office checklist for student enrollment, please refer to Reference Guide 5259.0, Use of New School Enrollment Form, dated October 11, 2010. This next document is a Student Emergency Information Form. You should have 2 copies for each student. You can place 1 copy in the enrollment packet, then from that make a second copy of the completed form. The original emergency card should be filed in the nurse's office and the other copy in the attendant's office. The major changes on the new form is the option to provide a text message number and the section to identify military-connected students. Please refer to Bulletin 6303 dated June 16, 2014 for more information and a copy of the new Student Emergency Information Form. This form is also available on the LAUSD website under the Families tab. Taking a closer look at our Student Emergency Information Form, notice that there's a space for 2 parent or guardian information. Please be sure that parent indicates which number they prefer the school to call for different message types. For example, emergency, attendance, and general information. Also notice there is now a section for text message numbers. Immediately to the right of the text message number is a box and a statement that reads, I authorize receiving text messages and I understand that I am responsible for all text-related charges. If the parent or guardian provides a text message number, please make sure that they also check the box indicating their understanding of the charges. The new section to identify military-connected families is right above the health information section. It asks if there's an immediate family member on active duty, guard, reserve, or veteran, and the relationship to the child. It also asks if the family member is currently deployed, if so, what branch of the military and status. This information is collected in an effort to provide resources and support to military-connected students and their families. The authorization for emergency medical treatment section and the health alert section at the bottom of this form is very important. This provides us with information on any health conditions, allergies to medications, or any medications that the student may be taking. It also provides the school with information on health insurance if applicable. It is extremely important that the parent or guardian signs this emergency form. Their signature certifies that they read and understand the form and give authorization for medical treatment if needed. This is a temporary health card. At the secondary level, only the temporary health card is needed. The permanent health card will be included with the elementary CUME record. We are required to obtain proof of immunization for all students. Homeless students and students in out-of-home placement such as foster care are given 30 days to meet the requirements if they haven't already done so. We are to enroll these students immediately. Remember that a TB test is no longer required for school-age children, and 7th grade students are required to have a TDAP. Refer to Bulletin 1570.2, Enrollment Support of Homeless Children and Youth in Schools, for assistance with students who are unable to obtain immunization records. Be sure to make copies of the immunization document and place it with the enrollment documents. If the student is not immunized due to the parent's personal beliefs, then a personal belief exemption to required immunizations must be completed and submitted to the school. Beginning this year, 2014, an authorized physician must sign this form certifying that they informed the parent of the immunizations and the risk of not immunizing their child. You should have a list of all students who are not immunized, because in case of an outbreak, those students who are not immunized will be excluded from school first. For our lunch applications, parents can complete and submit the meal application online. From the LAUSD homepage, they can click on the Families tab, then click on Forms and Policies in the Parent Community Student Service branch. Click on the free reduced meal application, then complete and submit the form online. The application will be processed within 24 hours. If you choose to use the hard copy of the meal application, they should be available through the cafeteria manager at your school. You may also contact food services to request additional copies if needed. A student's meal eligibility status from the previous 2013-2014 school year is valid only until today, September 23rd, 2014. Families were encouraged to submit a completed 2014-15 application prior to September 23rd, because students without a processed application on file with the free reduced price status will be required to pay for their meals. The 2014-2015 meal applications were mailed to the households on July 11th, 2014, and made available to the schools the week of August 4th, 2014. Participation in the school meal program is completely voluntary. Households choosing not to apply for the school meal program cannot be required to submit a meal application. For additional information on the meal program, please refer to Reference Guide 6374.0, Key Timelines and Procedures, 2014-2015 Meal Applications, Title I Ranking and Local Control Funding Formula, dated September 8, 2014. The Student Residency Questionnaire identifies students who are considered homeless. Any of the living situations listed in the box qualifies the student for special resources. The student's name and parent or guardian signature is needed, and if none of the living situations apply, make sure the parent or guardian checks the box next to none of the above apply. If any of the situations do apply, forward this form to your homeless liaison at your school, or you can fax it to the number provided on the bottom of the form. In addition, LAUSD's policy states that schools should request a new student residency questionnaire and a new student emergency information form each year from every student. This is to obtain updated residency status and emergency contact information. Refer to Bulletin 1570.2, Enrollment Support of Homeless Children and Youth in Schools, dated June 17, 2013, for more information on the student residency questionnaire and to obtain a copy of the form. The ethnicity race identification of students. As of the 2009-2010 school year, the district is required to collect this information on all new enrolling students. The information on this document is also asked on the student enrollment form, and both the document and the questions on the enrollment form must be completed. This document is available by searching Ethnicity Race Identification of Students 2014-2015 on the LAUSD website, and it is also available in the Parent-Student Handbook. The Migrant Education Form identifies students whose family members living in the home has moved to work or to seek work in agriculture within the last 3 years. If any boxes are checked, the child may qualify for additional resources, and you should fax the form to the number listed at the bottom of the document. The information on this document is also asked on the student enrollment form, and again, both the document and the questions on the enrollment form must be completed. This document is part of Memorandum 6351.0, Migrant Education Program for Elementary and Secondary Schools, dated August 15, 2014. The American Indian Alaskan Native Letter Questionnaire identifies students who belong to a tribe, band, or group and may qualify to receive additional resources. If the student belongs to a tribe, band, or group, fax this completed document to the number listed on the form. This form is available at www.indianeducationlausd.com. Go to the About tab, click on Apply, and look for Title VII Student Eligibility Certification. The information on this document is also asked on the student enrollment form, and both the document and the questions on the enrollment form must be completed. The financial responsibility for damaged school property document informs parents or guardians of their legal responsibility regarding the damage to school property. This form can be found on page 147 of the attendance manual. So in addition to the mandated documents, there are mandatory resources that we are required to provide to our parents or guardians. All schools are required to distribute the Parent-Student Handbook annually. This is to ensure compliance and consistency and to relieve schools of the responsibility of gathering and duplicating required notices. The number of copies delivered to your school over the summer were based on the enrollment data received from the Office of Data and Accountability. If you need additional copies of the handbook, you can order them online by going to parentstudenthandbook.net or through the school's operations website. Please refer to Memorandum 5497.3, 2014-2015 Parent-Student Handbook Distribution. The Parent Handbook is also available on the LAUSD website under the Parents tab. Some of the resources we've been talking about are in this handbook, such as the LAUSD's attendance policies and the ethnicity race identification of students. Our next resource is a pertussis vaccine letter, which informs parents of the TDAP requirements for all students entering 7th grade. You can obtain this letter by going to Nursing Services, then Announcements, and look for the TDAP letter. We are also required to provide the parents and guardians with the district's and school's attendance policies and procedures related to absences, tardies, and truancies. In addition, school rules on behavior, the school map including locations of restrooms, pedestrian routes, and bell schedules are resources that we are mandated to provide. These additional mandated resources are generated at the individual school sites. Remember that the LAUSD's attendance policies are in the Parent-Student Handbook. The CHAMPS brochure, or the CHAMPS card as it is now called, provides parents and guardians with information on access to low health care for students. CHAMPS stands for Children's Health Access and Medi-Cal Program. Go to the CHAMPS website at http://champ.lausd.net to check for the updated version. The FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Notice. This provides information on the privacy and protection of student records. You can find this resource on page 149 and 150 of the attendance manual. And it is also in the Parent-Student Handbook. That completes all the mandated documents and resources in our enrollment packet based on LAUSD's policies and procedures. Remember, the information provided to you today can be found in the attendance manual dated March 2013. You can go to http://pupilservices.lausd.net or search for the attendance manual on the LAUSD website. For more information on registration and enrollment and other topics, you can go to our OE website at www.oetraining.net under Employee Resources and Just-in-Time Training. Also remember to check the What's New and What's Due tab inside LAUSD to check for the latest reference guides, memos, and bulletins. I encourage you to attend the 4-hour session for more in-depth training on secondary registration and enrollment. Lastly, for more enrollment information using MISIS, go to the MISIS website at http://misis.lausd.net to access the tools, resources, and user guides. This concludes my section of the registration and enrollment. I will be answering any questions that you may have. If for some reason we run out of time and your question is not answered, I will make sure to send everyone the questions and answers via email. Okay, I have a question. Does the photo ID of the parent or guardian need to be photocopied? Yes, you do need to make a copy of the IDs that you receive for verification and keep that with your enrollment documents. I have another question. I have read it from LAUSD that a student who is out of the country or new to LAUSD are required a TB test. Students under 18 are not required to have a TB test. I can look further, I can look into that and get your name and email that if it's different from what I just said, but as our LAUSD policy states that TB tests are no longer required for students under 18. My next question, can we hold enrollment if parent does not provide an IEP? No, you cannot hold enrollment for any reason. We're supposed to enroll our students immediately. We can request the IEP from the school when the parent provides us that information. Our next question, what type of ID should I copy who are undocumented parents? If they don't have an ID, they can fill out an affidavit and you should have them sign the affidavit and keep that with your enrollment forms. What type of ID should I copy who are undocumented parents? Again, you can make a copy of the ID that they have and then have them fill out an affidavit for parent identification. Our next question is, can the parent ID be from a different country? That was like the last question. I would take a copy of the ID that they provide you with and have them fill out, also as backup, have them fill out the affidavit for parent verification, parent identity information, identification. I have another question. Are changes and updates done show the user that updated the change? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. Maybe you can rephrase that. As independent schools, do we have to include the financial responsibility form? If you're an independent charter, I'm not sure of that answer, but I'm going to look into it and I will get your name and email you with the answer. We have another question. A student who says that she no longer lives with her parents, she's under 18, and she lives with her boyfriend and her father-in-law. Can her father-in-law be her guardian? In that case, the father-in-law would come, he would be the adult enrolling her in school, and he would have to sign the caregiver affidavit.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Tasha Davis now, who's going to talk to us about MISIS for secondary enrollment. If you have more questions for Yvette, if you could just send those in the chat box, and she'll follow up with you following the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. Basically, what I will walk through is the enrollment process for a student new to LAUSD. This process is performed using the Office Manager user role. So I'm going to select it from the landing page. The Office Manager user role is also the only role that will allow users to do a district-wide search of students. Otherwise, if you use the Students tab to search for a student, you're only able to search for students within your school. Okay. So to begin the enrollment process, I'm going to click on the Admin menu, trace down to Enroll Student, and click. And right now, the district-wide search screen is displayed. Okay. 9 times out of 10, you're receiving a student that's a transfer from another school. So in order to begin the search process, you can type in the 10-digit district ID. But this is a brand new student. So the first thing we want to do is to type in a username, last name, first name. The system default for gender is male. So if you're trying to enroll a female student, make sure that you change the radio button to female. And you can also type in the date of birth. Okay. And once you click on the search button, you'll get one of 2 results. If the district finds a match, you'll see a list of students that meet the profile. Otherwise, you'll get what I see on my screen, which is 0 students returned. And the new student button is activated. If I click on the new student button, the online enrollment form is displayed. And this form basically corresponds with the enrollment form that you include in your enrollment package, the triplicate form. Okay. My school is displayed. Any field that has a red asterisk is a required field in order to save the enrollment record. Okay. Going to click on the drop-down for school year. Select the current school year. And you'll notice that the system will default to the current date. Now, if for some reason you're behind in your enrollments and you're enrolling a student that actually began yesterday, for whatever reason, maybe that student started towards the end of the school day, you want to make sure that you select the correct e-date when you're enrolling the student. Okay. For entry code, you can select a value from the drop-down list. In this case, this student attended a public school outside of the district. Okay. For grade level, I'm selecting the student's current grade level. Re-entering the last name and the first name. And re-entering the date of birth. Okay. Selecting the gender, Is this student a twin? Yes or no? I'm selecting no. The unaccompanied minor field is not required, so I'm going to leave it blank. For the home phone number, typing in a value. For birth verification, select the appropriate documentation from the drop-down list. And for student residence, going to type in the address number. Okay. And select a street type. And as you begin to type some values, the system will filter values in the list, and you can make a selection from that value. Okay. Whenever you enroll a student, I'm missing my Y for Tweety. There we go. Whenever you enroll a student, you want to do an address search. And you'll get one of 3 messages. If the address that you're entering falls within your school's boundaries, then your school should display as the school of residence. If you're entering an address and it's outside of your school's boundaries but within the district, or maybe one of your address elements are incorrect, like maybe you have street instead of boulevard, you'll get another message that says, could not find an exact match, did you mean this? And it'll give you a couple of options to choose from. The third option is if you enter an address that's outside of the school's boundaries and it doesn't find a comparable match, you'll be prompted to create an attendance permit. Okay. So let me click on address search. Okay. And you see what I get. Student address is not within school boundary. Please enter attendance permit details. And I keep getting an error when I select Tweety as my address. Okay. So let's try this again. Okay. Alrighty. Temperamental. But now we have the information that we expect to see. Southgate Middle School is the school of residence. The permit type values are now shaded from entry, and I can continue with the enrollment process. Okay. So for birth country, I'm going to select United States. For school of residence, even though it displays at the top, I still do need to select it from the list. The residence verification, please select from one of the values displayed. Okay. And that's it for the first section of the enrollment form. Okay. These menus are collapsible and expandable. So now I'm expanding the parent and guardian information. Okay. Okay. Clicking on the Add Parent or Guardian Information button. And I'm adding my first member. Okay. Okay. Last name, entering the relationship. And make sure that for the relationship, if it's the parents, that you're entering father and mother and not birth mother and birth father. Those are specific to parents that are the birth parents, but someone else is enrolling the student. Okay. First name. Is this person verified as the legal guardian? Is it the primary guardian? And does the student live with this person? Okay. So I'm saying yes to all of those options. Even though they do not have red asterisks, I would complete these values. Okay. For home correspondence language, Select an option from the drop-down. Highest educational level, even though it's on the enrollment form, is not required in MISIS in order to save the enrollment record. So I'm going to leave it blank. Okay. The contact information is very important because this is what will interface with the Blackboard Connect application. So based on the numbers and the selections that you make here will determine the type of call that parents or guardians receive on behalf of the student. Okay. So the first option is required. The other two are optional. Okay, so let's complete the first one. Okay. So this is the number to contact during the daytime. And this is for emergency notification. And as I'm making selections, you'll notice that I'm going left to right, top to bottom as I make my entries. And that's because based on some of the selections you make, some of the drop-down menus will automatically populate values based on the previous selection. So that's always good to remember regardless of which MISIS screen you're working with. Left to right, top to bottom. Okay. For the phone number, okay, I'm entering phone number and the phone type. Is it the home number, the work number, mobile or cell, or other number? I'm going to select work number. Okay, now although this is the only value that's required, it's suggested that you complete phone information for all three. That way you'll have an option for the attendance notification as well as the general notification. Otherwise, if these values are left blank, what MISIS will do is copy the information entered on the student's record for the home number and populate that number for all three categories. Okay. For the mailing address, okay, I'm going to enter my same address. Okay, select California, street type, and zip code. Okay. Now, if the residence address is the same as the mailing address, you can click this radio button here, and the information will populate at the bottom. Okay. At this point, I can click Save to save the first entry for the parent or guardian. Okay. It'll give me an opportunity to double check to see if I need to make any edits. If so, I can click on the Edit button. I can click Add Parent or Guardian to add the next record. Or at this point, I can continue with the next menu option, which is Student Home Language. Okay. Again, all fields with the red asterisk are required. Okay. So I'll begin typing information here. Okay. The student's primary language, this will display on the English learner screen for anyone that needs to be classified or will have an initial classification for English language services. Once this value is entered, it cannot be edited. Okay. Now, if there's an error entered in this field, once the enrollment record is saved, then you would need to contact the Office of Data and Accountability to have them make the correction for you. Okay. The next question, has the student received any formal English language instruction? Is the student's ethnicity Hispanic or Latino? And for the student's primary race, some people indicated before, especially for transfer students, that before the race was populated as Hispanic in the secondary SAS system, and now it's coming over to MISIS as white. That is correct. You'll notice that Hispanic is no longer listed in the drop-down list of primary race options. Okay. So just want to point that out. Okay. I'm going to collapse the Student Home Language tab and now open the Student Educational Information tab. And again, as I'm completing these sections, they're all derived from the regular enrollment form. Okay. Going to the next section, which is previous school information. Okay. Did I attempt to enroll the child in a different school in LA County for the current or preceding year? If I say no, then the next field becomes shaded. If I say yes, then the drop-down list will display an option for you to select the outcome. Okay. Is this student currently under an expulsion order? I'm going to say no. If the answer is yes, then you cannot enroll the student at the school level. You would need to contact the Student Discipline and Expulsion Unit for further instructions on whether or not the student can be enrolled. Okay. The date of first U.S. school enrollment, excluding preschool and infant. This should come directly from your enrollment form. And the same for the date of first U.S. enrollment. Okay. Now the last tab, Additional Correspondence, does not have any required data entry fields. But as I expand it, you can complete this information if you want correspondence to go to an address other than one that you've previously indicated. So perhaps you have a post office box, or you want mail to go to a caregiver's address that's not one of the primary guardians, maybe a babysitter, so that they'll know what's going on with the school. You can input that information here. Okay. I'm going to open the first tab again, because once I click on the Enroll button, any error messages or conflicts will display in this section of the enrollment form. Okay. So I'm going to click Enroll. Okay. In the top left corner of the screen, I get the message Student Enrolled Successfully. In the top right corner, in the Student ID section, I get the temporary student ID, which is 7 characters, all numeric. You will need to notate this number on the student's enrollment form and use it for any correspondence until the 10-digit district ID number is issued. Okay. Now all we've done is complete the basic enrollment form. There are other areas of the student's profile that have other areas that require information to be completed. Okay, so we've enrolled our student, and now I'm going to show you how to do a student search now that the student's actually enrolled in our school. Remember, one of the first things that I said is unless you're doing a district-wide search, when you use this option, you're only able to search for students that are currently enrolled in your school. Okay. Also, one thing to note is that when you're trying to search for a student using the 7-digit district ID, you won't get any results. So unless the student has a 10-digit district ID, you'll need to search on this screen using the name. Okay. Okay, here's my student. There are 2 different ways you can access the student's profile from this page. One is by clicking directly on the name, which is a hyperlink that will take you directly to the student profile. The second way is to click on the action menu, and it'll give you some sub-menu selections that you can choose and jump to directly. Okay. I'm going to click on the name hyperlink to take me directly to the profile. And in order to view the entire screen, I can click on this arrow here, which will collapse the search results and make the entire screen visible. Okay. So I'll start with the Enrollment tab and we'll go over. Okay. So the Enrollment tab will allow you to make any edits to the enrollment data. You can also add information about military family members, additional family members. For secondary schools, for those students that are participating in SDP classes, you'll need to indicate that here on the Attendance Category tab. Okay. This is how they'll display on the classification and the statistical reports. So you would indicate the category here, the begin and end dates, save that, and then it'll display on the corresponding reports. Okay. Also, if you need to make any edits to the student's enrollment history, to the far right, you'll see a button or a link that says Edit. It'll take you back into the enrollment form, and you can make edits. So some examples of edits are if you need to update the address, if you need to update any of the required fields, that maybe you made a typo or some of the information's changed, you can click on Edit. In addition, there are select users that can now process a grade level change. So this is where you do your promotions and demotions. You can actually click on this link and make the change without having to update the other fields on the enrollment form. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. It will bring up the screen. Is this a grade level correction? Yes or no? If you say yes for a grade level correction, and you click on a corresponding change, the system will update it as of the current date. Okay. If you say no and make the change, it'll be effective the start of the school year. Okay. So correction, effective the date you make the change. No is effective the start date of the school year. Okay. Withdrawal history is where you go now to process a withdrawal. So this is where you process your L-outs. Okay. If I click on Add New Record, the withdrawal date will default to the current date. Withdrawal type, based on the L code you select, a list of reasons will populate. You'll notice that right now it's blank. But if I click on a withdrawal type, then I'll get a new list of reasons. Okay. The future school, if it's known, you would select it. Same for future residents. Otherwise, you can type unknown since they are required fields. And then you can click on the drop button to process the L-out. In addition, you can edit withdrawal records that your school has created. So if you've already created withdrawals this year and you made a mistake, say for example you L'd out a student on the 22nd and it should be the 23rd, you can go into that record, click on the edit button, and then make the appropriate change. Okay. For attendance, you can update attendance directly for the student. Okay. Now you'll notice that when I click on the update attendance link, there are no values here. And that's because we haven't assigned this student to any classes yet. You won't be able to take attendance for a student unless that student is enrolled in a class section. So we'll come back to this area after we assign the student to class. Okay. Attendance at a glance will allow you to see a snapshot of the student's attendance record. So you'll notice here for some of the dates, you'll see slashes for the dates or the weeks during which the student was not enrolled. Okay. Here's the E date with the E code. Any values with an end indicate that those are dates that school is not in session. So as the student has attendance taken, then you'll see this screen populated. Okay. Trying to scroll up to the top. Wait a minute, let me do this one more time because my controls are blocking my my scroll bar. All right, let's see if I can get this in here. Let me try something. Ah. Okay. Alrighty, let's see if this will work. There we go. That's what I need to see. Okay, so let's jump to academics. You can view assessment information here. If for some reason you need to input grades for a student, you would be able to do that from this screen. But again, since the student is not assigned any classes, you won't see any values populated here. Since I'm logged on as a middle school, you'll see middle school culmination information here. If I was logged on as a senior high school user, then I would see graduation standards information here. Okay. Records request would be for you to indicate, okay, a school that's requesting records from you for another student. So if you receive requests for a student that you've L'd out, you can indicate that information here on the records request screen. Okay. Retention warnings. This is more for elementary schools than it is for secondary, but for those of you that have 6th graders and you still do this process, you can input that information on this screen. You could view the student schedule here, test scores if they'd already been administered, transcripts. Those with the Office Manager user role can update the information in the transcript information section. So you could input any comments, indicate the parent approval, courses completed, and the verification date. Anything else under transcript details are limited to the principal, scheduling admin, and the counselor plus user roles. Okay. And then just like records requests, you have an option to document transcript requests. Under support, this is where you would document any information related to a counseling communication or counseling or discipline referrals, including suspensions. Okay. For services, this is where you would document some of the information on other forms or if a student has been identified for select services. Say, for example, you're planning to have an intervention at your school, either after school, before school, or on Saturday. This is where you will document that information. Go to Add New Record. Okay. Here's the academic intervention screen. And basically you would have to indicate the program type, whether the student is eligible and or participating, the participation reason, and again, once you make the selection, then the drop-down values will populate. Subject, the start date and end date. Now this screen is what will actually enroll the student in the program. For most interventions, there will not be any attendance taken and there won't be any grades administered. It's just a tracking mechanism to document the students that are participating in the intervention program. Okay. So I'll close this window. For the English Learner screen, okay. Now you'll notice here for the primary language field is populated already with English. And remember, we input this during the enrollment process. So again, that screen will infer this field on the English Learner screen. Okay. If the student had been identified as GATE, you would be able to view that information here. Same for Special Ed and Title I as well. So since this is a new student, we won't see any information here, but if you're looking at newly enrolled students or incoming 6th or 9th graders or transfers, you would be able to see that information populated here. Census. A lot of the other documents that are part of your enrollment packet, There are different screens that you can use to input the information on those different fields. Okay. Now some of these fields are input by staff in central offices. Some of these you'll be able to do as an office manager role. Okay. So the census menu is where you would enter a court order. Okay. And so it has the person type, and then based on that you'll see the different values populate. Student exclusions is another option that you'll be able to input. You click on Edit School Exclusions. You'll see the different exclusions for the release of data. Your child may or may not be interviewed, photographed, or filmed by members of the media. You don't want to release information to the military or to the student clearinghouse for college. Whatever the exclusions are, you can indicate them here. Okay. Health insurance and homeless, all from the forms that are part of the enrollment packet. The identifier screen is where you actually go to process name changes. So if you input the name incorrectly during the enrollment process, or for whatever reason the students change their name legally, you would go to the identifier screen, select the roster option, either the legal name or the preferred name, make the entries or corrections, and then save it. Okay. Meal code is where you can view the meal code roster, the meal code information for this specific student. And then for migrant information, you would be able to view that here. The miscellaneous menu is where you would actually go to input the immunization and the health screening information. Also, for those of you at senior high schools, you would be able to view the athletics information. So if I click on health screening, so you would be able to input TB information or view prior TB information since it's no longer required for a new enrollee. For the dental or oral health assessment, you would indicate that here, physical, the CHDP information, and the CAP. Okay. For immunizations, click on the Add New Record button, and you can input the information for each immunization type. Okay. So those are the basics of the student profile. Okay. Now the next area I want to take you to is where you would actually go and assign the student to a class. Most of you have more than one user role. You can enroll the student in a class with either the scheduling admin or the counselor user role. So I'm going to click on my name and then trace down to sign in as a different role. Okay. Type in my school again. Filter for my role. Now for many of you, you won't have to do the filtering because you'll see most of your roles all on one screen. But since I'm logged on and have access to more schools, I need to filter. But you can if you need to. Okay. So I'm going to select the scheduling admin role. And from the admin menu, trace down to master scheduling. Okay. Now the walk-in scheduler will allow you to schedule a student into classes. Okay. The left panel will display a list of students. Okay. The right panel will show the selected student's current schedule. Okay. Now any field that has a blue hyperlink is sortable. So one thing I like to do, especially if you've done a lot of enrollments, if you click on the sections link, it'll filter and resort your students to display those that have no class sections, or it'll resort the order from ascending to descending order and vice versa. Okay. So you see we have quite a few students that have no sections, but I'm looking for the student that I just enrolled. So now I can also type in the name. Okay. And here's my student, Taylor Ray, 0 sections. Okay. And on the right-hand side, you'll see Taylor Ray, no sections. Now I'm ready to program this student into class. Okay. There's a couple of ways I can do this. Okay. If I say check all, it'll check all of the courses at the school. And it'll show a list of periods that class sections are available for the student to take. Anything with a solid green square means that space is available in that class during the corresponding period. If I place my cursor over that square, it'll show the current number of field seats and the maximum number of seats in that class. Anything with a solid red square either means that the class has 0 capacity or it's already at max capacity. Okay. So what I'm going to do is filter out the conference periods because I don't need to see the conference periods for teachers. Students won't be enrolled in conference periods. Okay. Another thing you'll see is that some schools, when they build the schedule, they use what we call a section type. Now you might know this as an emphasis code. Okay. So this just allows you to group like type of subjects together. Okay, now this school just happened to do a lot, so I'm not going to do everybody's because we'll run out of time if I do that. Let's see. Okay, we're at the end there. All right. So now we've filtered out the conference periods, and now let's just see the instructional periods. So if you want to filter to see what's available during a specific period, you can click on that corresponding link. And now it'll only show the classes that are available during period 1. Okay. Now unfortunately there's no filter by grade level. Okay, so this is a 7th grade student. Let's see, here's a Common Core Math 7A. Okay. So I'm enrolling the student in. Now you'll notice that my start date is September 23rd, and that's because that's the current date. Okay. That's also the date that's displayed here. But my student was enrolled as of 9/22, so I need to make that change here. Okay. Change this to the 22nd. I also need to change this date. Okay. All right. Now you notice that before I did that, my square was yellow instead of green. Anytime you see a yellow square, it means that attendance has already been taken for that particular class. Okay. But again, this was yesterday, so that's a normal message we should expect to see. Okay. So I'm going to close this out. Okay. Let's save this. So I would repeat this process for each of the different periods. Okay. Until the student has a full class. So I'll just plug in a couple more just so you can see how this works. Okay. And then I'll save those changes. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to log back in as an office manager. Search for my student. And now, since I already know that the only thing I need to do is to take attendance for this student, I've already looked at the profile. I just want to go in and take attendance for this student for yesterday. I can click on the Action tab, select Attendance. Okay. It'll take me to the student's profile page for the attendance. It'll show the dates that the student was enrolled, the periods that I've assigned the student to classes. Any cell that has a yellow background indicates that the attendance for that student has not been submitted. But we already know that it's been submitted for the class because we saw that yellow square on the schedule screen. Okay. But I can just click on Submit Attendance, and it submits attendance for this student for all 3 periods and both days. Okay. And once you click Submit and click the OK button, then you'll notice that the background of the cells changed from yellow to gray to indicate that attendance has been submitted for this specific student. Okay. So those are the basics of the enrollment process for a new student. Okay. So you have to make sure that the student doesn't already have an existing number. You enroll the student, you assign him or her to classes, and then you take attendance. Okay. And at this time, what I'll do, I don't know how much time we have left. It looks like we have about 5 minutes left. I can take a few questions from the group. And then like Yvette indicated, if we run out of time, we get a transcript of all of the questions that you've asked, and we'll make sure that you receive answers to all of your questions. Okay. So I'm trying to see. Okay, looks like I have a question here. What if after you've searched for a student, nothing shows up, so you enroll them as a new student, but then they appear once they are enrolled? Okay, we have had this happen on occasion. That would be considered a duplicate enrollment. If there are no entries made on the record that has the student ID, then you're fine. We can do what's called merge the information so that everything you input on the new record can be merged to that one with the district ID. There's a form that you complete. It's on the secondary SIS website. We can always make sure that you get that form as well. So there's duplicate enrollment, and then there's also a term called concurrent enrollment. So we are working to clean a lot of those records up. Okay. So let's make sure that you have the form in case you have a student that needs to either have their records merged or have the duplicate record deleted. Okay. Next question, why did you mark no previous English education? Okay. And it really would depend. It's not necessarily that the student took an English class. When they ask that question, it usually means, was this a student where English was a second language and they've had formal instruction in English? But these answers are provided directly from the form. So if the parent indicated no on the form, then you indicate no when you enroll the student online. If the parent indicated yes, then of course you would select yes and input that on the form. Okay. Okay. Next question, if we use only one phone number, will the parent only be notified at that number for only emergency, or will it call that one number for all general and attendance and emergency? Okay, if that one number is entered, the number for the emergency contact, that person would be contacted for that purpose. For the attendance and the general categories, the number that's input on the student screen as the home number for the student, that is the number that will be called for the other 2 categories. So that's why I said even though the other 2 numbers on the parent or guardian information are not required, it's recommended that you complete all 3 so that Blackboard Connect has the correct information. Otherwise, it's going to infer that number input on the student screen on the enrollment form for the other 2 categories. Okay. Next question. My coworker told me that we should not put emergency tab for the parent. I don't know why. I don't know if part of the question's cut off, but that's really a choice of the parent. If the parent chooses to be notified as an emergency contact, then by all means input that information. 9 times out of 10, though, they'll usually have a different person as the emergency contact in case one or both of the parents cannot be reached. So it's whatever information they provide. If they provided themselves as the emergency contact, then that's the information that you should input on the emergency emergency screen. Okay. Next question, where can we add additional correspondence after enrollment has been completed for a parent sharing custody of the student? You actually cannot access that menu again once the enrollment has been processed. So what you can do is that when you input the parents, you can actually input the different addresses for those people, and as long as they're both authorized to receive information, they'll get it. So when you do the little radio buttons, you can say yes to both for primary guardian. Only one will show on the profile screen, but as long as you've designated both, they both should receive correspondence. Otherwise, you'll need to make sure that you indicate that information during the enrollment process before you click the enroll button. Okay. Looks like I have time for one more question during the webinar. Let's see. On the screen where we see the emergency contacts and the guardian information, why do we see the phone numbers to the emergency and not the parent numbers? I'm assuming that you're speaking about the student profile page where it'll show the emergency contact information. That's just like an at a glance, and it's usually just like a quick reference to say, okay, if something's going on with the student and we need to contact someone in an emergency, who is that person? So it avoids you having to go through the enrollment menu and look for the emergency contact when that's the first person you're going to call anyway. But if you need to find the information for the parents, then of course you would go into the tab and locate the contact information for the parents. But the goal of having an emergency contact is to have that person be the first point of contact for a student. So to me, it would make sense for that number to be the one displayed as the emergency contact number. Okay. So again, at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Ms. Brady, and I thank you for your participation in the webinar. And we will make sure that all of your questions get answered following the presentation.
Okay, everyone, on behalf of Organizational Excellence, thank you for participating in today's webinar. We'd appreciate it if you'd return to the Learning Zone and fill out a program evaluation, which you'll find under your My History tab. And while you're there, look out for our future and previously recorded webcasts by searching for the keyword webcast in the class offerings. Also, check out our just-in-time training topic pages at www.oetraining.net. And thank you for attending. We're going to stick around for a couple of minutes, so if you have any more questions either for Yvette or for Tasha, please type them into that chat box and we'll have them follow up with you following today's presentation. Thanks so much.